There are millions of acres of opportunity out there. They belong to you. Every day, decisions are being made that affect your land, your water, your wildlife. You should know about them. This is your mountain. All right, welcome everybody. We are back for another episode of the Your Mountain podcast. And we're back because it's by popular demand, I think.
We're very popular.
We're popular.
Are you more popular? If we had a popularity contest, you probably win.
I don't know.
Northwest Hunter thinks so.
I saw that comment.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you knew Northwest Hunter.
No, I don't, but I'm going to know you, buddy.
I thought that was the greatest.
Friend.
That was my favorite comment we've ever received. I think that was on Instagram, wasn't it?
Good, buddy.
And just to make it clear what that said, I want to. My phone's on airplane mode, but I think I can remember it pretty close. It was.
You've memorized it.
Was
it makes you so
great
happy.
Podcast again, or another great episode, except for Nephi, which I thought was just fantastic.
Yep. I've got a long memory, Washington State.
It was good. It was good. I read it first thing in the morning and it just set me up for a great day. You know, sometimes you just need that pick me up.
I'm still brooding.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
No.
Anyway, other than that, how are you doing, Nephi?
I'm actually good. It's been a good day because I got to spend it with the legislature. Isn't that fun? That's a lie, kind of. No,
yeah,
I mean, as much as you appreciate the work that they do, boy, is that a lot of work. We'll leave it at that.
I don't know how you put the legislature and fun into the same sentence.
What's the last day?
That does make it fun.
There you go.
Did they adjourn today? Or are they going to?
There's a lot of chicanery and shenanigans that the question is they could potentially adjourn today, but they might not.
Yeah.
And since for everybody that doesn't care about the legislature that we're talking about, you've got a legislature too. You can follow your own chicanery and shenanigans, probably online wherever you're at.
Yeah,
you should.
Probably should. We try and steer you in the direction of legislatures that are taking action on some things that are going to affect hunters. Listen to some of our last couple of podcasts, and if you live in one of those states, we've talked about things in Oregon and Pennsylvania and Maryland and Maine and
Pennsylvania.
Kind of all over the place. Pennsylvania.
Those are my peeps.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. So let's stop there. Let's do what we actually meant to do. Yeah, podcast is over. That was a good
Thank you, everybody.
That was a good one.
Life's about experiences.
So we're about to have one.
Yes,
because we got a great guest joining us today. So coming to us all the way. Well, I'll let him. I know he's in Minnesota. I don't know exactly where in Minnesota. Eric Dinger, right?
Hey, no, he's not in Minnesota.
Not in Minnesota? I thought you were in Minnesota.
I was in Minnesota. So was Eric.
That's where you were. That's where I'm confused.
Yeah, but Eric's in the great state
let's let Eric say where he.
Yeah. Eric Dinger, our guest.
Where's this guy from? Who is this guy?
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.
How you doing?
Well, it's Friday for me. I'm about to head to Colorado for a couple days off. So,
you should go to the legislature.
I should. What do you want me to talk to them about?
Nothing, please. Just go. Just don't say anything.
Just go and see
so
if I can find them.
What are you doing in Colorado?
Yeah, what are you doing in Colorado?
Well, we're going to go stay at a place where you can ski, and I think I'm going to watch other people ski, avoid injury, and sit and probably drink cocktails and pretend I don't have any responsibility for a couple days with my wife and a couple of friends from my wedding and their spouses. It's a couples trip. Wish me luck.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you like that sort of thing.
We're new to it, actually. For some reason, my wife and I always have chosen to travel together by ourselves. And for one reason or another.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, that I have no friends, possibly.
Traveling together by ourselves. Oh, you mean together.
Yeah,
together.
We're traveling together while we're together at the same time.
Yeah. You're not like in different parts of the airplane.
I mean, you guys are married. You know that there are times when you wish you were.
Actually, a lot of times when I travel, I am because I'm so cheap. Upgraded. No, I buy the cheapest tickets possible, and that pretty much guarantees you're not going to be able to sit together.
Dave, well, honey, I got first class, so enjoy the flight.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Colorado, that'll be a fun time.
Good times,
but
yeah.
it still hasn't answered. I guess we haven't. Since I completely misspoke and said you were from Minnesota, but you clearly aren't. Where are you traveling from to get to Colorado?
Well, I actually live in Lincoln, Nebraska, but I did spend 5 years living in Minnesota going to high school. So you're not wrong to say I'm from Minnesota. Grew up in South Dakota, then Minnesota, then down to Nebraska for college, which is where I am at this very moment and where I call home.
So Lincoln, Nebraska. There is. What's that area of town in Lincoln? It's like called the Hay. No. You'll know what I'm talking. It's the trendy area. Got all the really great restaurants.
It's called
what's
the
that area
Haymarket.
called?
The
Haymarket. I knew it was Hay something.
Actually,
I couldn't remember. Yeah.
It's like so many towns now, right, or cities where they've taken an old district, like a warehouse district. In our case, the town of Lincoln was built around the train, and so these are all the old like hide and fur buildings and hay buildings, and the Haymarket got its name because it was where the hay had a market. Cool like that, right?
Yeah, right.
And so
it's really original naming.
Yeah, super cool. Well, Nebraska is known for its creativity and innovation. We're located right off of the Haymarket, actually, just a couple blocks away in Lincoln. And you're right, it is a super cool area. Lincoln's been in kind of a renaissance, like maybe Soto and other places you guys have been, but Lincoln was a pretty sleepy little town about 15 years ago, and we've put upwards of $1 billion into kind of entertainment and restaurants and bars and breweries and things like that make it a lot more fun place to live. That's for sure.
Well, I was really impressed the last time I was in Lincoln. I spent some time down there in the Haymarket. I was kind of blown away. I didn't expect that from that kind of vibe and just the energy that was in that area. I didn't expect that in a town that size. And so I was really impressed. I'm so used to Western Nebraska, which has its own inherent qualities, right? That I like taking my kids to the Scottsbluff Zoo, but the Scottsbluff Zoo isn't the Haymarket in Lincoln.
Yeah, it's not what you'd think from Nebraska. Nebraska is cool. Like the number one selling point I have for living in Lincoln is you can eat at good restaurants. You can buy the things you need at wherever you need to buy them, because most of the big box stores are here, or even the smaller retail stores are here. But you're 10 minutes from the place you want to deer hunt or turkey hunt. So, where I sit in downtown Lincoln today, I am 13 minutes from my favorite place to hunt, and that's pretty cool. Like you can't get that awesome. Just everywhere. So, for your audience, Lincoln is one of the things I describe it as. It's the biggest small town I've ever known. In that,
I thought that was Reno.
Yeah, minus the hookers. But it's kind of cool. It doesn't have like the urban bypasses, and which that kind of thing can frustrate you. But it has a very strong middle class with the university and the state, being located here, or the capital being here, and so it's a really neat city. It's very diverse because of the university and because of the state, and so it's kind of a little oasis here in the Midwest. And west of us it gets pretty fun for us hunters in that there's great places to be outside, and east of us you have Omaha, which is kind of a cool city in and of itself. But Lincoln's just kind of a neat, innovative little town that does its own thing. It's pretty centrist in a pretty red state. It's, I don't know, pretty well educated, kind of fun place to live.
I almost ended up in Lincoln. I mean, I literally was choosing between two jobs, several years ago, and I ended up here in Cheyenne versus in Lincoln. But it's a great location. And speaking of location, you mentioned coming west to hunt. I want to fly an idea past you. You ready?
Ready.
So Dave and I were sitting here the other night with Mike and with our friend Jessica. We came up with this fantastic idea. So you live in Lincoln. You're probably looking for places to go hunt and fish and people to go with. And so we're like, hey, you know what we should do? We'll get a new app. We're going to call it Timber, right? It's because it's kind of like Tinder, only it's going to be for finding hunting buddies. What do you say? Good idea?
I mean, I'm in love with it. I think you should build it.
Are you so in love with it because you're already doing that?
Because you already built it?
Yeah. Way to bury the lead. Yeah. So what is this guy on the podcast for? Well, I think that's my opening to introduce what I joined the outdoor industry to do. So I am part of a company called Powderhook, like gunpowder fish hook. My wife would appreciate me telling you guys that she was the person that came up with the name. So Powderhook, like gunpowder fish hook. And what Powderhook is timber, but already built. So if you're looking for the idea that the fellows proposed last time, but in reality on your phone today, then use the flip off the podcast app and download it. Check it out.
I downloaded it. I'm extremely disappointed that you came up with the idea first.
Well, so let me ask you before we dive more into what you do with what Powderhook does specifically. I mean, our whole concept was this idea that that hunting is a lot like dating, right? Or at least picking your hunting buddies is a lot like dating, and that you have to try a bunch out before you settle in on ones that hunt the same way that you do and have the same kind of style, and that you same ethics and everything. And so it can take a while. And Jessica made some comment about, that's why we take 2 cars out hunting, because you might have to end this thing early. And so that was the idea behind timber, was you could swipe right to find that perfect hunting partner. Are you saying that's one of the things you do?
Oh man, no.
But now you're patent pending,
but maybe soon. You guys got any other ideas? No, you're right. The path to becoming a hunter is varied and filled like dating along the way with people that you probably don't want to go with again. We're not quite as sophisticated as that, where you can't swipe right on somebody if they're holding the goose the way you want your goose held, if you know what I'm saying.
I have no idea.
No, I don't get innuendos.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So it's a little like a dating app, but only very little. What happens in Powderhook is, first of all, we exist to make it easier to start hunting. Our goal as a business is to create 3 million new hunters in the next 5 years. And the way we'll do that is we'll create 100,000 what we call digital mentors. And so in similarity to something like timber, you can shop a mentor. So you can say, I'm a female and I'm from Lincoln and I want to learn to turkey hunt. And we will present to you, in Lincoln, maybe there's 10 or 12 women who are registered in our app and have a profile set up where you can, look through their pictures and posts and things and see if they're the kind of person that you'd be interested in turkey hunting with. And then, of course, reach out to them, build a relationship digitally. And then, of course, where that goes from there, whether they end up dating and married or they just end up hunting together, we don't always know. But your idea of shopping for somebody that looks fun to hunt with or that might do it the way you want to do it is definitely there. It's just not quite as black and white, if you will, as what timber will be when you guys get it built.
Let's be honest, we're never building anything.
No, we are. It's in development. Nobody else do it. Nobody else do it. It's in development right now. We've got a team of coders working on the app right now. We've got all of our attorneys out there filing the appropriate patent paperwork, registered trademark, all
Even
that.
Even the attorneys who have anything to do with this podcast aren't doing that. And no one here knows what code is.
Nephi, you don't know how to keep a competitive edge in business.
I suppose with all these Russian hackers being put out of business, I suppose the labor market in Russia is pretty attainable. So timber built by Russian hackers has a cool edge to it. We took the Russian hackers and put them to work on hunting. I mean, hey,
and then timber.
I mean, that's the neat thing about your name is the slogan's built in, right?
Yeah.
Where'd you guys meet? And then everybody goes,
and then you just say timber. See?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man, it's brilliant.
Right. So now, Nephi, rethink your prior statement and maybe emphasize the point that we have a team of developers.
Let's talk about Powderhook.
Okay, we can do that.
This is like the patent application pending phase, right?
That's what I was saying. Yeah, we're right there. Our place is in line. You can't cut in front.
We have Googled timber, and so patent application pending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about Powderhook. So the goal of our business is to get folks like you, the two of you specifically. Yes, you make your money in the natural resources community, and yes, you have jobs related to hunting. But what we want to do is inspire first the people that are in your position, people that know the way around hunting, that have some experience, that have something to share. We're trying to inspire people in your position to get involved as mentors. And then each mentor in our system over the span of the next 5 years, we hope, can mentor upwards of 30 people. And so it sounds a little goofy to call that a mentorship when it happens in the phone. And frankly, if there was a better word we could figure out, we'd use it. The better word for it is Google has an app called Google Local Guides, and that's really what our system is very similar in many ways to Google Local Guides. But for the outdoors, it's just you can't call somebody you interact with in the hunting community a guide, or you end up with licensing issues and legal issues and things like that. So we're sticking with mentor, but a digital mentor is
great.
What's that?
I think that's great. I like mentor.
Yeah, I mean, it sells short a little bit what a true mentor is, in that it's, in our world, it starts digitally. But one of you guys have talked about in the past, with hunting's decline and imminent aging out of baby boomers from the ranks of hunters, we've got to find new and scalable ways to bring hunting to urban areas and to young people that use their phone for things that maybe a generation before didn't use. And so, to think that you could begin your journey as a hunter through your phone might be an affront to the sensibilities of somebody in their 60s or 70s. But to somebody, I have an 18-year-old daughter, to do anything that doesn't happen in your phone is an affront to her sensibilities. So Powderhook is, the way we market it, the way we talk about it, is all about you are invited. We want people to feel welcome. We want to provide an environment where help is a question away in an app, where you can meet somebody who will take you. We want to make the process of, in many ways I use this metaphor a lot, but I think of like learning to golf. I go to the golf course and I rent some clubs, or I borrow some clubs from a friend, and I start golf. I make a tee time and I'm golfing. Hunting, or you can use any example. If I want to learn to bowl, I pick up a bowling ball at the bowling alley and I start bowling. And as you guys know, hunting and shooting sports and stuff don't really work that way. There's a lot of impediments to it, from everything from hunter ed and licensure to finding access to having the right gear to having somebody to go with. And all of those things, for me and for the two of you, were covered by a mentor. In my case, my dad was the person who taught me all of those things. And I never had to worry about learning to hunt because I was steeped in hunting from birth. Some of my earliest pictures, I'm holding the antlers of a deer my dad shot. And so I just don't know life without it. But the very eminent problem we have in hunting is that that's not going to be enough people to fund conservation going forward. The people that, I'm assuming you two grew up around it. Or were introduced to it at some point. There isn't enough of us left to keep hunting at the levels where it's been. And so we've got to figure out a way to make it easy to be new, or as we say, make it suck less to be new, and get people who are, not like us, whether ethnically not like us, or from an urban versus rural standpoint, aren't raised like us, don't have the kind of access or tools that we have. We have to make it easy for those people. And so I think about it a lot of times as, instead of making people scratch and claw their way into the ranks and to the lifestyle of hunting, why can't we put an environment together digitally where all they got to do is say they're willing, and then we'll grab them by the nape of the neck and say, come with me, and here's a resource, and here's an event, and you're invited to this, and make it so that it's kind of an offensive strategy for getting into hunting rather than a scarcity and defensive driven strategy like hunting has been. And before I forget, and I can't believe I forgot to tell you guys this, but if the mentoring idea isn't the way that we're going to grow hunting, you were onto something a bit earlier with timber that I can't believe I forgot to mention. But a second strategy that could work really, really well for hunting is hunters having more kids. And so maybe rather than the mentoring angle,
Wow,
you
that's
guys
a
are
terrible pitch.
No,
you guys
he's
are
onto something.
timber is if you want to have babies that are going to turn into hunters, you use timber. It's a strategy. It would work.
So-
I mean, hunters kids hunt.
So I like it, but here's this is a new take on Timber, because Timber wasn't in our mind, wasn't really a dating app. It wasn't bringing men and women together. It was bringing hunters of both genders, irrespective of gender, together to have a hunting relationship.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What if I want my kids to hunt? Where am I going to go to find a guy to mate with? Or that's a girl in my case to mate with.
Yeah, probably. I think all of these issues are beyond the scope of our podcast.
Yeah, but you've given us an idea. Maybe we can expand the reach of Timber.
I think you should, or narrow the reach to one very specific purpose.
You're trying to eliminate your competition, aren't you?
If you want to procreate hunting babies, use Timber. I think that's
trying to.
I think you might be right, but maybe. I think you might be right. I think that's a good suggestion, but I still like the other aspect of Timber as well. I mean, this is going to be a conglomerate. This is going to be some kind of.
Let's talk about you buying our idea right now, Eric. Let's talk about you buying it at this moment.
I mean, clearly, what do you got into it? 10 minutes in a podcast?
Lots of R&D. Lots of R&D.
Yep.
How about an idea swap? I'll pitch you guys an idea for you to take and run with, and then I'll take Timber and run with it. You want an idea?
Well, let's not agree to anything before hearing the idea.
All right. So here's the idea. You ready?
All right. Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. This is called Wife CRM, Customer Relationship Management. So like Salesforce for your wife. So invariably, I want to go hunting. I want to go hunting. I am excited for, I'm going to Cuba to fish in a couple of months. It's going to be sweet, right? I really am.
Yeah.
One of the things that my Neanderthal man brain will forget to do is to charge or stock up the marital bank account in advance of that trip. So into Wife CRM, I'm going to put the trip to Cuba, when it's going to happen. And then the CRM will work backwards to the date today and help me stock my marital bank account in advance of that trip. So that when I leave, my wife is happy to see me go. And when I come back, she's happy to see me come back. So it's going to automate things like, hey, and I think it should talk to you like this. Like, hey, Neanderthal, have you thought about setting up a massage for your wife while you're gone? Or your wife likes to go out for wine with these two friends. Have you thought about calling them and setting up daycare for the kids? Or it could be like, shoot your wife a text while you're gone. It's day 3 of being gone and you haven't called her in 3 days. You should text her at least. It could just give us prompts that would make us better spouses and make the average hunting and fishing trip a joy for both parties in the marriage. Now, it happens that my wife would be along with me on the hunting and fishing trips, but most hunters are men. Many hunters are men. And so, what do you think? Wife CRM for Timber?
I don't know if I want to. I mean, it's a brilliant idea. I think it's a great idea. No, this is going to take a business meeting behind the scenes.
I'll trade.
No, I like it. I really like Timber too.
Right now I own 1/3 of Timber. And you guys own 1/3.
Yes. No controlling interest yet. We'll work that out. But it's a nice. I'm not 100% sold, because that seems like maybe the most complicated algorithm ever put together.
Dave's questioning the capacity of the technology.
I don't know if we're there yet.
That he does so much that he has to, he's calculating right now. His wallet is getting lighter as we speak, because he's like, oh no, think of all the gifts. He's like,
yeah. So Dave, tell me this. Super, super simple. Mm-hmm. What day is your wife's birthday?
Great question.
August.
Oh no!
Check my calendar.
No, what day is your wife's birthday?
August 7th.
It's March 11th, 1983.
Okay.
So you weren't supposed to say that part of it, though.
On August 7th, Dave's wife was born. Invariably, if Dave is like me, on August 6th, Dave's going to say, "Oh man, I got to get her a present," and you can't get the present you really want to get her, unless you buy it on the internet or you find something thoughtful on Etsy or something like that.
I usually make a coupon for lovin'.
Oh, yeah. She's got a stack of them unredeemed.
Yeah. Exactly right.
You put an expiration date on them. So Wife CRM is going to shoot you a text on August 1st and say, hey, here's the 4 things in your wife's Amazon wish list. Reply 1, 2, 3, or 4, and we'll ship you whichever one you want to buy her. And so you just reply to the text 1, and Amazon nicks your account, and you get in the mail at your work or wherever you set up in advance the present like 3 days in advance of her birthday, so that you have time to like go to Walgreens to buy a bag to put it in instead of just handing it to her, and you look like a star.
Yeah, CRM.
And then you get to go hunting.
It's a good one, and there are definitely times where it's necessary. I mean, so mine's staggered up. I've got my anniversary on August 5th and her birthday on August 7th. And a couple of years ago, I had to place a phone call from the top of a 13,000-foot mountain to wish a happy anniversary because I had a backpacking trip that coincided with some of that. Of course, I said, well, no, I'm not going to say what I said. I don't want it on the record. But
it was I'm sure it was well thought out and touching. And
but it might have been helpful months in advance of planning this trip to have had that
a thought,
that algorithm let me know that might have been a poor choice of weeks to go.
Yes, correct.
So anyway, but we'll circle back with you later on.
Just saying, timber for Wife CRM on the table.
But I got a lot of leverage in this conversation.
I do want to get back to Powderhook and something you said earlier. So you said your objective is to create 3 million new hunters in the next 5 years. That breaks down. You're looking at 600,000 new hunters a year, 50,000 new hunters a month. How? I mean, that's an unbelievably ambitious goal when you think about the number of hunters we actually have in this country today, right? You're talking about a huge percentage increase in hunting in 5 years. How do you do that? How are you going to do that?
Great question. So one of the beautiful things about technology, besides reminding you of when your anniversary is and to order a present, is that technology has the ability to, and many platforms outside of technology have the ability to create what's called a network effect. And at the risk of explaining something that you guys already know, I'll briefly explain that a network effect is the idea in a platform where each new person into the platform makes the platform better for every other person. And so what happens with technology is you struggle and you writhe around and you figure it out and you try to get it right and you just battle. Each new user is really hard. Each new user isn't referring tons of new people to your app. But then you do something like what Tinder did, which is you get to this point where people start meeting a match on Tinder, and then they start telling people they met a match on Tinder, and then those people meet a match on Tinder, and you get this positive affirmation cycle that in technology we refer to as a positive network effect, where things just, instead of growing one by one by one by one as Powderhook is today, we've got 160,000 users, but we think at about 500,000 users, what's going to happen is there will be enough people who have met somebody who taught them to hunt on Powderhook, telling people and coming back as mentors and telling people that this is where they learned and they are here to teach. And what will happen is you get something that looks a little bit more like exponential growth in the latter few years of those 5. So today, your concern is definitely valid. Like today, this month, Powderhook will not create 50,000 new hunters. But what will happen is we're going to create a few hundred this month, which is more than a lot of people can say. But then a year from now, those few hundred are going to create a few hundred, and you're going to get an exponential effect that in the latter few years of our 5-year goal, you're going to see, provided we hit that positive network effect place, you're going to see really exponential growth and takeoff of a system built to do not really that much of a different thing from what timber is, right? It's built to help people find people to go hunt with and to learn about hunting. And if that promise pays itself off over and over again through generations, of hunters, 1 year to the next, you're going to see some really rapid growth out of Powderhook. And we're a little ways from that, candidly. I think you can use Powderhook today to learn to hunt, and that you can definitely find a mentor. But as the technology perfects itself, I think it's going to start to grow really quickly. So it's a nonlinear answer, really, Dave. I don't anticipate that it's going to be 50,000 at a time. I think it's going to be 100 and then 200 and then 400 and then 800 and kind of grow like that.
So that's awesome. I have a question for you about Powderhook.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think I had an opportunity to meet you at the Minnesota Outdoor, is it hunting and angling?
Heritage
Banquet?
Alliance, MOHA, Minnesota Outdoor Heritage
MOHA.
Alliance. Yep.
Yeah, and we talked a lot there, and you were talking a lot with the group about getting people into the great outdoors and about mentoring. And that's one of the reasons, what I'd asked if you'd come on the podcast, because of that talk that you gave, and I thought it was extremely well done. So one of the things that you noted was that those of us who work in the outdoor, any place associated with the outdoor space, whether it's whether you work in conservation or you work in in industry that supplies goods to the outdoor space, you kind of have an obligation to carry these things forward. I mean, not only should you be doing this because it's the right thing to do, but I mean, you're making a living off of those people who off of the resource. Just that's what you do, and I thought that was really interesting. Am I missing something there?
Well, I think just to piggyback on what you're saying, many generations ago, wild animals were suffering in this country from market hunting and from settlers moving west and really depleting the resource, and we created new systems of licensure, and then we created taxation systems to pay for things like public land, and then we created species groups that were designed to do habitat projects that would aid in game species so that we would have game to hunt to fund conservation. And today, the challenge in front of conservation-minded people in an era when there are a lot of deer, and the Canada goose has fully recovered, probably beyond what it ever was. And in my area, there's probably more turkeys today than there ever were in Nebraska. Our challenge as conservationists today, I believe, is to save the funding source. The conservation of the hunter is the challenge of our generation of conservationists, in my opinion. And when you make money off of this resource, if hunting for you is about how far you can shoot, or how badass your gun is, or how many inches of antler, or how cool your lease is, if you're making money in this resource, you are setting us up for failure. And yes, I want to inspire you to want to be a mentor. And yes, I want to help you see that hunting is about experience and community, and it's about, a way of life, and it's about, an ethos that we share, and it's about the place and the animal. And and maybe you even know all of that stuff. But today, the thing we need is more hunters. And if you work in this industry and you don't know that, I hope you'll hear me loud and clear that baby boomers are aging out of hunting. And behind them is a smaller cohort of young people, of people that are beginning to hunt. And that presents massive problems, policy problems, funding problems, all kinds of issues. And you guys have covered all of those, and many of those anyway. But to me, I believe that if you want to call yourself a conservationist and make money off of this resource in 2019, I think it should be a personal affront to you and an affront to the resource if you're not in some way trying to take new people. And so that's how I said it at MOHA. And I think a criticism of that line of thinking would be, well, not everybody's able to, and not everybody's willing to, or not everybody's ready to. But to me, you can do your part. And whether that's, taking one person from church, or taking your neighbor and their kid, or whatever it may be, at least do your part in acknowledging that this thing we love and that we care about, and we make podcasts about, and we make our money off of, it needs a new form of conservation in 2019. And it needs you, the people paid to be involved in it, to set that example for the people that aren't.
Yeah, it needs conservation of the hunter. It needs conservation of the culture, conservation of the opportunity.
That's right.
So how do we get Dave to not be selfish?
I think we got to
give out his.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. I have to stop you right there. I'm not going to give you the spots where I hunt.
It's not for me.
But
it's for posterity, Dave.
But look, I have, and I have. I've taken a number of people out, and I've shared with them places that I wouldn't normally share with people, because it's an opportunity to get people out hunting that haven't been hunting before. Now, do I blindfold them, take away all their GPS, compasses, that sort of thing, spin them around a dozen times, drive them, if it's an hour away, spend 7 hours driving to get there? Yes, I do all of that stuff. I don't want them to know where they are, but I want them to have an opportunity.
Sure, they can't walk when they get there, but I mean...
No, I mean, I say that, and Dave knows that, Dave and I both have I'm proud to mentor people, and I know Dave's the same way. I like taking people out. I do feel that obligation, and interestingly enough, I think what you find is when you take somebody out, you take 1-2 people out every year. Every year you may not find that person who it jives with permanently, but you do that a few times and it sticks. For some of these people it sticks, and that's all really that's what we need for everybody that hunts and fishes in this country. You don't have to convert 5 people every year to that hunting is great. You have to convert 1 in 5 years. But that might take you going out. That's going to take more than just one shot at it. You're going to have to try a little bit harder than that. But we can do this. This is doable.
It's absolutely doable. And I'll offer this because I think sharing of my spot is, maybe besides having the time to do it, sharing of my spot is a top concern for somebody interested in diving in as a mentor. I think of my spot in a lot of different ways. What I am asking you and your listeners to think about is, yes, I would love for you to take somebody hunting, but what we're really saying is we want you to invite people to share this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And in this lifestyle, there are a ton of opportunities for invites. And I think NSSF has done such a good job of narrowing the message on the invite. It is an invite, but you can invite somebody to the local Ducks Unlimited banquet, or the local Backcountry Hunters and Anglers event, or you can invite them to come make jerky with you, or you can invite them to go to the range and shoot with you, or you can invite them to go to Cabela's and shop, or you can invite them to the youth hunt for Pheasants Forever. There are dozens and dozens of things that we do each year as sportsmen that are part of the lifestyle of a hunter. And to say that, oh, you Dave, or you anybody, especially in the West, you need to take somebody to your best spot on public land that you worked for years to find, and you guard that spot with your life. I don't think anybody's saying that. I think if the average hunter in this country hunts 22 days a year, 22 trips a year, or at least that's what it was a few years ago. Now it's something like 18. What I think we're saying is 1 in 10 times you go, bring somebody new, throw somebody new in the truck. And when you do go to do those other things that aren't a threat to your access, make it a point to use those opportunities to introduce new people. And the reason I say that is 3 of the people that hunt with me every year in South Dakota, being from there, I have family ground up there, and so we make a trip pretty routinely that way. 3 of the people that hunt with me started hunting not by going hunting, but by coming to the Pheasants Forever banquet or the Ducks Unlimited banquet with me. And what they saw was a way of life and a group of people enjoying themselves that they wanted to be a part of. And a hunting trip is one manifestation of that. But so is the night we get together and drink beer and cut up deer. And that doesn't involve them taking our spot. It involves them going home with, some jerky. And I think you can do either and both without sacrificing any, without giving up something personal and hard earned.
So let me build on that. So the guys I hunt with, I have a group of about 5 guys that I hunt with, and I've gone through the whole timber process to make it work. Right?
Are you guys having kids or?
No, we're not.
This is Timber 1.0.
Probably
they're not even going to
probably never will. Yeah, this is 1.0. But all these guys I hunt with, I've watched 2 of them kill their first ever elk. I've watched 3 of them, or 4 of them, I guess, kill their first ever deer. I think only one of them grew up hunting. The rest of them had never really been exposed to it, and I kind of brought them in. So I created my my timber group through recruitment, not I drafted them. They weren't already in the league. We didn't do any trades. I drafted them into hunting, right? So I'm bought in 100% on what you're talking about. I just wanted to throw that out there.
So there are at least 5 people out there whose hunting capabilities are as bad as Dave's. Who like that? He is their mentor. They're walking around out there like garbage sacks on for rain gear, like they're just a search and rescue teams. Just
all right. I got to tell you one more little story about this because so it's a quick 2-parter, right? One of these. 2 of these guys were out with me one time on an elk hunt,
or as we like to call it, flirting with death.
Right. Fair enough. But so we were on an elk hunt, right? And neither one of them had killed an elk before, and so it was my objective to see both of them kill an elk. One of them happens to be a co-host of this podcast that's not here today and can't defend himself. But we got on elk at, I don't know what they were, 40, 50 yards. And I'm sitting there watching these 2 who've never killed an elk kind of line up, get ready for a shot. And I'm just waiting for somebody to pull the trigger. And I think you know how it is, it probably was 2-3 seconds, but in my head, I counted to 100 and nothing had happened yet.
Did you say ready?
and I'm just, somebody shoot, and nobody shot. And these elk took off, and we never got a shot at these elk that were 40 yards, 50 yards away, right? And so I made a statement at that point. I'm like, here's the deal with elk. when you see an elk, you don't coordinate anything. The first one that can line up and has a clean, ethical shot takes the shot, and the rest of us just go back and get our backpacks, or whatever happens. We're just there to help at that point. So fast forward a couple of years, and we're doing what I like to do, right? Tiptoeing through the timber, and we're listening to elk bugling all around us. We know they're there, but we just can't catch up to them. So there's a little bitty clearing, and we say, okay, let's sit down here. These 2 guys weren't on that trip. These same 2 guys weren't there. It was one other guy that had said, if I was on that trip with you, I would have pulled the trigger, right, on that first trip. And well, he was with me on this one, and we sat down in this clearing, and it was on a high mountain ridge, and I had a clear shot to a cell phone tower in a town that was probably 25 miles away, but I needed to set my fantasy football lineup. It was critical because the loser in my fantasy football league has to take the ACT, and
that's such a good punishment.
Losing this fantasy football league, losing this fantasy football league is way worse. Nobody cares who wins it. Yeah, there's some money involved, but everybody's focused on the loser, right? And I was in a tough position where I had a chance of losing this season, and so I needed to set my lineup. So I have
algebra skills are poor.
So I have my phone out. I have my phone out, and I'm setting my lineup in the middle of the woods, and we're listening to the elk bugle around us. And all of a sudden, there's an elk bugle that we hadn't heard before, and it was because it was only 30 feet from us.
Gosh!
And I just remember whispering, like, I see the elk, I see the bull come out, and I see the cows start to come out behind, and I was going to turn to my buddy and say, wait for a second, we'll get 2. And I think I got as far as, whoa, when I heard the blast and my eardrum just exploded. as he shot over my shoulder. And so I was sitting there holding my phone instead of shooting an elk. And that's when I felt a sense of pride. I'm like, these guys have come a long ways.
Well done.
That sense of pride, I think, is so baked into what hunting is all about, right? To see somebody that you have tutored or mentored or helped turn into, somebody who's got their own back straps on the oven and of their own accord, I think that's just like a really, I don't know, I want to say carnal, but it's like a very deep process to go through with somebody. And then, it gets cooler as they go teach people. And it's not the same as having a family, I guess, but it gives you like this connection for life. And I'm sure you guys are thinking of the person or people in your lives that you have that connection with. But for me, I can vividly see a couple of the guys along the way that I've taught that are now teaching people. And it's like, we'll always have that together. I was back to timber. I was always there first, so that's pretty neat feeling.
Nobody can take that away from you.
That's right.
Yeah, no, that and that everything from the field to fork, right? I mean, it's being there for that first experience when they kill that first elk or deer or whatever it is. That's amazing. Talking them through the process of boning an animal out or quartering it out or whatever you do in the field with it, talking them through that process, and then when you get it back and you teach somebody how to butcher an animal, that process is, I mean, just the whole experience, everything from the planning that goes in, teaching them which garbage bags to buy for their rain gear, right down to.
Are you condescending to the guys? Are you condescending to the guys that wear a 55-gallon and can't get into a 30?
No, I mean, to each their own, right? I'm not going to judge.
Dave doesn't really use garbage bags for rain gear anymore.
Yeah, I still do.
No, you don't.
I do. I have acquired some new rain gear, but I have not yet taken it out of the packaging.
Oh my goodness.
So, because it's so much heavier than a garbage bag.
Oh my.
And more effective, but
well, that's not debatable. But
that's not what we're talking about here.
But
ounces equal pain.
Ounces are pounds. Pounds are pain.
Pain equals no hypothermia.
Some habits are hard to break.
So
you probably don't want me to sign up as a mentor.
Nerf guns are lighter than rifles, but
they are.
Pounds equal pain.
So what's the biggest in your eyes? As you're going through this process, what do you view as the biggest threat? What's the hardest part about recruiting new hunters?
I think hunters in general, and the culture of hunting that I see changing, but we went through an era where hunting television exploded and social media got big, and hunting became in some part about the hunter. And I think anytime something like that happens, I think that represents the biggest threat and the biggest challenge to overcome for people that want to see hunting into perpetuity. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you just one example, and it'll be a social media layup example, but a year or so ago, there was a video that went viral on social media of a guy that had shot a mountain goat in the snow, and the goat bled and fell on the snow and fell and fell and fell and fell. Like, you guys probably remember what I'm talking about, but
I do.
It had to have been 1,000 feet. This goat fell, and it left just this horrifying blood trail down, and the guys were hooting and hollering, and that's the kind of thing that scares me, because as conservationists, as hunters, it should be baked into our DNA to honor the thing we kill. I mean, we are taking a life of value. And when we don't honor that, and we put ourselves in front of honoring that, honoring the creation, honoring the value of that living thing, to broadcast something on social media, it becomes really hard to defend hunting. And I don't like to be in a position to have to defend it. I think it's a good thing. And I think hunting should play offense because we should be bringing hunting to more people and offering hunting to more people. But when we get those black eyes from our own, it's really tough to overcome. And so when I think of like the if hunting is to fail, it's going to be because the culture of hunting is about hunters. It's not. And when it becomes about the hunter, we lose. What do you guys think?
I think when you were speaking about that, I actually started to think about a story that a friend had told me. And that friend is a gentleman, a former Navy SEAL. And the reason I like what you said is when you talk about honoring your quarry, honoring the animal, he was talking about being in another country and how those individuals had to learn to, even though they had to learn to be effective, there's a certain amount of understanding and honor, even in a situation where they were at war. And what came to my mind, and I apologize, this is kind of off the subject, is like, even in those circumstances where we have, enemies, those people who, they learned that to honor, to honor other life, to honor other cultures, to honor other things. And it's something that, like, why can't, why would it be anything less? When we're talking about hunting, it's part of, it's bigger than the individual. It's bigger. It is a real thing, and it's tough to talk about because it's almost unconscionable that we all wouldn't have some kind of respect for our quarry, for our whatever you want to call it, your competition. For it's just, something that I don't think it's debatable. I think it's something that we do. Now people might express that differently. They all might express that differently. There's not going to be the same level of, outward reverence for everyone, but certainly it's something that internally, I think that we all need to have that level of cognizance.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I think. There's a whole host of issues, right, that create the challenges to getting hunters, recruiting new hunters. But I think from where I sit, kind of building off of what you said, Eric, about some of these social media things out there. The one thing to me is, so we're becoming more and more urbanized all the time, right? And that's common knowledge. What, 80% of our population, or maybe it's more than that.
88. Yeah, 88.
Yeah, lives in an urban environment, right? And as we become more and more urbanized, we also become more and more insulated from the natural world. Right? So I look at it this way: what is it? Something like 95% or 96% of people eat meat, or of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how many of them truly understand where that food comes from? And I think that's a problem with the urbanization is, the food's just in the store, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where it comes from. And so they're divorced from the relationship with nature, and kind of divorced from the relationship with where the food comes from. And so then you see pictures on social media of taking an animal's life, and it can be anything. It can be this mountain goat tumbling down the hillside. It could be just posing with your animal. And look, I pose with my animals, right? I take pictures with my animals. But I'm just saying, from the outside looking in, from those 88% of people that are living in these urban environments, that's something completely foreign to them. They're not used to it, and they're becoming less used to it every day. So it's then harder to convince them that this is this is important, and the just the general, and this is a problem with hunters too, the general lack of understanding about where conservation funding comes from. Like, I think if more people knew what paid for wildlife management, you'd have a lot more people supporting hunting and maybe even getting into it.
So I think there's two issues there that you just brought up, and I agree with you on that people need to understand where management comes from. They would need to understand the conservation that hunters put in. But I do want to back up to that other issue and say, while I'm terrible at explaining, what I was thinking that, a moment before, I think I'll go back and tell a little hunting story of my own that kind of helps. In the early, it's been over a decade ago, I went on an elk hunting trip with some good friends. Thank you guys, to the Thoroughfare. which is the most remote location in the lower 48. And
for those that don't know, the thoroughfare is located just outside of the boundary of Yellowstone National Park on the southeast side of the park.
And it's really hard to get into.
And
so anybody who's listening that thinks that I'm giving away a super hunting spot, you can get into the thoroughfare. I'm going to slap you on the back. Go at it, buddy. So it's challenging. But I remember one afternoon I was sitting overlooking Thoroughfare Creek, and we'd kind of split up. And this is an area where you're going to see as many big bears as you're going to see big elk. And but I was sitting alone on a ridgetop, and I could see for miles.
I would expect nothing less from your story.
But as I was sitting there glassing, and you couldn't see a soul, you couldn't see, anybody. And you're in there where and I've seen that morning, I'd seen 3 large grizzly bears that morning. And it was just the most, I felt so at peace sitting there in the middle of that mountain, thinking that it didn't matter whether it was 2010 or whether it was 19 something or 18 something. Like the thought of like that holistic view of, just being part of the food chain out there, just being there, to me was just absolutely centering in the universe. I mean, it brings you a sense of calm and a sense of purpose and of reality that you can't get doing many other things.
So you're saying people don't get that walking through Central Park?
And I think that's what makes that's what I want to share with people, is that, experiences like that. And I think that when you get out and you're a participant in these activities, it gives you a unique opportunity to focus and to realize that, on this great planet that we call Earth, that us and those grizzly bears and those elk and other people, no matter what country or place that they live in, we're all just on this ride together. We're all just part of this big thing, but we're really just a small part. And I think when you gain reverence for that, I think it helps, shape how you tackle problems in the world. I think it's a really healthy thing.
So that's a beautiful narrative. I'm trying. I mean, I don't want to diminish your narrative.
I'm going to drink some of this Monster Energy drink, so I'll be ready to go.
I'm trying to think, how does this tie back to the question, which was, what's the biggest issue facing you? What's the biggest challenge of recruiting new hunters?
I think it's a lack of understanding. I think that when people, so I apologize for not completing the circle. I think that for somebody that lives, I totally respect this. Cat lady that lives in New York City in her apartment, and that's her whole world, and she pulls her meat out of the freezer that she got from the grocery store. Those people, when you're talking about hunting, they to them it is not part of who they are. They aren't part of the system. They think that their world, it exists in a small cave in that building, separated from what is wild and what is human and what is nature. And so I think that what we need to do is you have to find a way to attach those, to reacquaint people with what is wild and lost from within themselves.
And one way of doing that is becoming a mentor on the Powderhook app, right?
Absolutely.
I would be for that. Yes.
Yeah.
I vote yes.
Yeah.
I think I just lost myself in some of the stuff that I just said. It's entirely possible.
We're just going to end
that
piece.
But I feel very peaceful. I feel at peace with myself.
I'm glad you do. I'm going to now transition away from that.
I do want to talk about Powderhook for a second.
No, that's perfectly fine. That's kind of
Eric,
just something else.
So tools in Powderhook. Let's talk about the tools that you guys have access to. So I know that you guys, so give everybody who gets on, let them understand, so what is Powderhook? It's more than, it's not just a blog. What does it do? How does it help people? It's not just a place to meet people. What does it help you do?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. So a couple things. Number one, you're going to be asked to become a mentor, or if you would like to find a mentor right away. And we lead with mentoring because that's kind of our promise, is that if you're looking for somebody to help you, we can help you. Besides that, you're going to see what we call camps in our app. And a camp is a group. So think of them like Facebook groups, or like groups on Messenger or in your text message, where you have a number of people that are together to talk about a certain thing. The difference between our groups and a reason you would use Facebook or another tool is you can do cool things in our groups, like you can share maps together, or you can share events, hunting related events back and forth. You can drop pins that you can see. So if the three of us were planning a hunt in southeast of Yellowstone, we could be sharing spots together and talking about the hunt, sharing information, and then maybe we invite a mentor who has done that before into our conversation, and that person can give us a tip or guide us here or there. So
you have
in some ways,
so you have mapping capability in the app.
Yeah. So in the app is, and our app is completely free. So in the app is, at one time, what was the most comprehensive public lands map ever. Onyx has since passed us up by a wide margin, but we have public land in all 50 states in an easy to use map. There are events from 67 different organizations in our calendar. So if we think of, when I think of access, and where Powderhook actually started was working on access. And so I think of access with an acronym. We call it GUEST, which fits the narrative of inviting people. But GUEST is groups. So we want to be able to provide you a group you want to be part of. So there are groups on Powderhook, we call them camps, but there are groups on Powderhook that are just women's groups, or they are just groups for hunters in New York City, or they are just groups of deer hunters or turkey hunters, or people learning to turkey hunt, or people interested in long range shooting, or people with dogs. And so you have groups that you can go join and be a part of. You have users, so GUEST, the acronym GU. U is users, so you have other users you can interact with. You can find mentors. You can learn from other people. You can ask a question, and we've built an algorithm that is designed to get you a question answered as fast as possible. So again, if I'm traveling to hunt in Colorado and haven't hunted there before, even as a person who's hunted his whole life, I might have a question about a game law in Colorado, or a spot, or where do I take my elk to check it in? Or, there's just millions of questions that are related to that area. So you have access to other users. E is events. So GUE is events. S is spots. So you have a great public lands map with lots and lots of spots in it. You have depth contours on lakes and things like that. So you can catch fish while you're ice fishing, drop a pin if you catch the fish, or if you find a spot you like, share it with buddies in your camp, that kind of thing. And then T is trips. And so over the years, we've worked with people like Cabela's Outdoor Adventures to try and open up trip opportunities to people. Long term, we hope that the offering of a trip looks a little bit more like a seat in the pickup with you two than a paid outfitted trip. But we're not quite there yet. So GUEST is the acronym of kind of what's available. So groups of like-minded people, or people you can learn from, users you can learn from, events you can go to, spots you can hunt, and trips you can get invited on. How's that?
Sounds like you got it all except timber.
I'm not saying you couldn't meet somebody and have outdoorsy babies with them on Powderhook. I'm not saying you can either, but the capability of meeting someone new is there. So
when did you launch Powderhook? How long have you been around?
So we started, actually what we were building when we first started was, are you guys familiar with Airbnb? Like the place you go and short-term rent a property? When we started as Airbnb for the outdoors in 2013. And so what we were doing is working with landowners to try and create short-term lease access. So you would lease a parcel of ground by day. And we spent a lot of money and a couple of really hard years figuring out that we didn't have enough money and influence in the world to get farmers to let us send strangers onto their land. So to make a very long story short, from the beginning, we spent 2 years on an idea that frankly failed. So if you're out there and you're thinking, oh man, it'd be nice to just, click a button and be able to cross the fence and pay my $150 and that's my land for the day because you saw, a covey of quail fly over there or whatever. We've tried it, and if you want to learn how not to do it, I'd be happy to talk with you about that. So if you're thinking of doing that yourself, maybe don't. But then at SHOT Show 2017, we launched what is now Powderhook, this sort of Google local guides help desk kind of app for helping people get started and find places and get invited and go. So we haven't been at it for too terribly long.
No, but for starting in 2017 and having 160,000 users, you're off to a pretty darn good start.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool that people need. I mentioned Onyx earlier. What we are is different than the other hunting apps on your phone. I mean, we are not trying to outmap Onyx, and we are not trying to, help you track your hunts like you can on ScoutLook or on HuntStand. What we are trying to do is we are trying to build a community so that if you are missing a community and you want to find it, you can find it. And if you are missing an answer from somebody who might know it, you can get it through us. And so it's something in between both of those. And so, if you're thinking, oh God, another hunting app, to my knowledge, nobody really does what we do. And certainly not the mentoring focus.
Oh, I think it's great. I think, I mean, people can do it on their own. But as you mentioned earlier, it's hard. I mean, it's really hard, and it's a barrier to entry. This having to self-teach yourself how to hunt, what equipment you need, where to go, all that sort of thing. So, how did you say it earlier? You're making the barrier to entry suck less.
Yeah,
basically.
Make it suck less to be new.
Yeah,
we think of new as I moved away from family ground in South Dakota, through Minnesota down to Nebraska. And so I was new in Nebraska. I wasn't new to hunting. I've hunted my whole life, but Nebraska's game laws are different. Access is different. My family doesn't live here. My dad doesn't live here. So I need new people to go with. I need new places to go. I need to learn new rules. And so it's, and I hate to say it that bluntly, but it sucks to be in that environment. And for anybody who's moved around the country that hunts, they'll tell you that one of the things that's really hard about moving is you move away from a scenario where you are an active outdoorsman to almost anywhere you're not from. It becomes really hard again. And so for that person, Powderhook is perfect because you can meet fellow local people that are into what you're into. You can find groups to join that make sense for you in that local area, and hopefully take a little of the sting out of getting going again.
Well, I wish you the utmost success on with Powderhook as you continue to grow. I hope you reach that goal of 3 million new hunters. I hope most of them are in other states.
Hold on, wait, Dave.
I was
wait.
I'm not going to end it.
Wait,
I had another question.
I just wanted to interrupt you because I know that Eric goes also on a podcast called
That's what I was going to go to.
On Gravel. Well, I wanted to interrupt you because I know that his co-host hates it when I do. So I just wanted to interrupt you.
Well, you successfully did that.
Sir. Well done, sir.
That's for you, Ryan.
Yeah. So tell us about On Gravel. That was going to be the next thing I asked.
Well, thanks for asking. On Gravel is basically three guys. Ryan Bronson from Federal Ammunition. He's their conservation and public policy guy. A pretty smart fella, pretty well-read, pretty broad, generalist type knowledge base. And Andrew
Are you
McKean,
only saying that because he listens to this and you want him to hear you say nice things about him?
Well, I refuse to compliment him to his face. So
this is your way of doing it. We can be the subterfuge.
He wouldn't have it any other way.
Yep.
Anyway, now I pulled a Nephi and interrupted you. Sorry.
No problem. And then Andrew McKean is the other host of the show. And Andrew, some of your listeners might know, was the editor-in-chief of Outdoor Life for many years. And today we do some work together, and he's doing some freelance writing and things like that. And you're going to have a hard time finding a guy who knows more about hunting and the outdoor traditions than Andrew does. And so when we were concocting what should On Gravel be about, we were like, well, what's the most fun part of a hunt? And for all three of us, it was like, well, it's all fun, but usually the trip to the hunt is pretty damn fun. Like, you're in the truck, it's been a little while since you got together, you're letting some steam out with your buddies, you're going to scorch the earth with what you talk about. And so that's what we said is, well, why don't we just treat our podcast like going hunting together? And so when you ask, what is it? It is a completely free flowing conversation about what and wherever we want to take it, just like what you would do with your buddies on the way to a hunt. And, we've developed some goofy idiosyncrasies and things like that make it pretty entertaining. I think we're up to one listener now, which is exciting. So we hope to make that plural by promoting it on our sister podcast, Your Mountain.
Yeah, well, if you want to make it plural, then Nephi needs to start subscribing, because I'm a subscriber.
Dave is the
Nephi,
guy.
get in there.
Congratulations,
Dave.
You bet.
Oh, what
Man,
a good dude.
Dave, you're going to love this week's. I'm going to scoop it a little bit here. So Andrew lives in Glasgow, Montana. And one of the things that Bronson does is generally refuses to pronounce Glasgow correctly. Mm-hmm. So it's always like Glasgow or Glasgow or Glasgow. And we were talking about what...
Just out of meanness, right?
Just mean-spirited.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
As if being the city that is literally known for being in the middle of nowhere wasn't mean enough. As if never being above zero in the month of February isn't mean enough. Bronson's got a pile on the name of the city.
What a bully.
So we started a collection for Andrew, and this is the thing I would like from besides downloading and getting engaged on Powderhook. If you do know Andrew McKean, we started for him this week a glass cow collection. And we believe that you can mail a glass cow to Andrew McKean without an address, Glasgow, Montana, with the zip code, and it'll get to him. And so if you know Andrew, dear listener of Your Mountain, send him a glass cow, will you? I think it'd be such a nice thing for him to have a couple hundred glass cows, that he doesn't know what to do with, and his wife is pissed at him for.
Dave will probably buy him one.
So that's the kind of hard-hitting content you're going to get on Gravel.
Well, you had some hard-hitting content recently on quality whiskey and how to drink whiskey and all that stuff too, right? So, I mean, there's some sophistication there too.
There's some breadth, not just depth, but breadth.
Yeah, and there's some total boneheaded, just fun. It's literally like if the three of us hopped in the truck right now and we went hunting, what would we talk about? Well, I don't know. We would talk about. We would talk about policy, and then we'd talk about college, and then we'd talk about our hometowns, and then we would talk about whatever. Just go where it goes. It's pretty fun.
No, it is. It is. I will ask you one question about it. When are you going to upgrade your microphones?
Well, I'm on the microphone I record on, but we are going to upgrade to your system.
There's a lot of snobbery here at Your Mountain.
Yeah, you guys sound great. Not everybody's voice is as sonorous as the two of you, though. I mean, our podcast has to deal with my nasally voice, but there's not a lot I can do about that.
Well, we're missing today the sultry, smooth tones of one Mike McGrady.
We post produce ours too. Really, we're very squeaky, especially Dave.
I just wish I had a voice like that. Just that beautiful baritone. The late night DJ love song mix guy.
Oh yeah, Barry White. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well.
Hey, is there anything else you want to add? We don't want to keep you from the rest of your day. We appreciate all the time you've spent with us.
I appreciate what you guys do. If this is a Powderhook commercial, I suppose I better say, then you can download Powderhook for free on Google Play or the App Store. Follow us on your favorite device, social media. in the meantime, whether you use Powderhook or not, I hope that the message of getting out there and making hunting about the place and the animal and the community and the experience, I hope that hits home with you and that you do something about it. And if you learn nothing else today and you don't end up with that app in your pocket, take that message and invite somebody new.
And I hope our listeners have learned a lot. I hope they go to Powderhook. I hope they download the app, become a guide, or excuse me, a mentor. I want them to learn one more thing before we go. If you've listened to this, it sounds like you've listened to us at least once or twice. Maybe you haven't made it all the way to the end. So I'll explain what comes next.
I know I haven't.
But we always ask our guests the same question at the end of this show. We call it Your Mountain. It's about those places that are so special to you and to everybody. Public land, private land, it doesn't matter. But about the places that are special to each of us, that keep us in the game, that keep us in the great outdoors. And so I'd ask you, if you're willing to share, what's your mountain?
Great question. And I love that you guys do this. So as I was thinking about how to answer it, I mean, the reason I'm working is I want to move to a place out in the country and I want to buy my daughter's horses and things like that. But that's not really the answer I want to give. The answer I want to give you is I can walk you to within probably 10 feet of the place I shot my first pheasant when I was 12. It was in CRP. It was right east of Cottonwood Lake, south of Redfield, South Dakota, in 1992, third Saturday in October. First walk, I can walk you right to that spot. It was such a transformative experience for me. I'd hunted pheasants with my dad forever. I'd always carried since earliest memories, carried a BB gun and tried to shoot at them. But I shot my first bird, and I took my wife for our first anniversary. We went on a hometown tour. So I went to her hometown and then brought her up to Redfield to see my hometown. And I drove her by that spot on Wesley Booze's land. And that place had become a soybean field. It was CRP when I was a kid. And I don't know what happened, guys, but it hurt. It like something about me, it was like I felt lost. And so I will own that parcel of ground and it will be in CRP. And I might hang a flag or something in that exact spot because that was like the beginning of like, I don't, it's so hard to describe, but it was like everything made sense at that point, that I knew I was a hunter and that I was part of this group of people and that I was going to do this forever. And, I started reading the magazines, I suppose, about then, and I fell in love with it. And so my mountain, the thing that one day I will have in my family and will pass to my children, is the parcel of ground that I began my hunting life on.
That's awesome.
That is super cool. That is super cool. And then when that happens, you can come back on here and let everybody know, hey, I did it.
Yep.
I've got my mountain.
I just pray that it isn't my kids that do it with their inheritance.
And then the other thing you have to hope is that the person that owns that ground right now isn't listening to this podcast, because the value just went way up.
Yeah, this is this guy's Oedipus. He needs this.
Well, hey, Eric, thanks for sharing that. We always appreciate it when people are willing. I mean, these are always pretty deeply personal things, and we're very grateful when folks are willing to share those, because I think everybody can relate to that in some way. Because they have their own place. Everybody has their own place, and so hearing more and more of these stories, I just think reinforces people's own stories, and probably the hope is reinforces their passion for the outdoors, and refuels that fire to go after their mountain. And if they haven't found that mountain yet, to go find it. So thanks for sharing that.
You bet, guys, and thanks for having me on. This was really fun.
Hey, yeah, thanks for being here. Nephi, anything else you wanted to add?
I'm going to tell another long, winding story with no point.
Okay, so we'll get to that next time. But for now, just remember, life is about experiences. So go have one.